We're going to talk about the male archetypes, and I'm going to cover 4 primary male archetypes and discuss why understanding these archetypes can be really beneficial for your life. We do a lot of practice stuff in our programs in Man for Man. I mean, this is a very hands-on, approach-oriented group of men that are holding each other accountable to create their biggest dreams. And we try to shy away from too many frameworks, right? There's so many frameworks out there. And I'm somebody that has a long history of working with a lot of different frameworks. And frameworks are important because they do help us to understand what we're doing. And what we found in countless decades of research, and this is coming from my own teachers and all the work that I've done with some of the biggest teachers in the world, is that when we can understand how we grow, we can start to grow into our highest capacities faster. So really understanding the map enables us to actually get to where we're going faster. And that just makes sense, right? I mean, if you just think about, a time before there were actual physical maps on the planet, we had a really hard time navigating and finding places. I think it took like 2,000 years for people in the West to find China, right? But now it's like, boom, we got a map, we can see the world. And this is just a physical example. And we can then go to places really fast. Well, the same is true of our minds, right? The same is true of how we grow. And what a lot of people don't really understand is that there really is somewhat of a process that is shared amongst people, amongst men, amongst humanity, in terms of how we grow and how we evolve in terms of our own thinking and understanding of the world. And that's what frameworks do. Frameworks help to summarize certain lenses of how we can grow into our highest capacities. And look, that's why you're here. That's why you come to these meetings. That's why you watch these training videos, because you want information that can help you grow faster so you can achieve the things that you want quickly. Boom, right? So we use frameworks at times to lay out the map, to lay out the lay of the land, and then we apply practices to help you achieve things within the map, within the framework to get you there faster. Does that make sense? All right, good. So the framework we're talking about today is these male archetypes, and you probably have heard of that word, archetypes. And the way that we can look at archetypes is, and the way that Carl Jung described it, the eminent psychoanalyst and even a philosopher, is that archetypes are kind of patterns of behavior or thought that exist collectively, right? So there's ways that we go through this life that are kind of shared, shared memes, if you will, or shared lenses. And the best way to really talk about archetypes is just to kind of jump right in. And I want to show you this book, because this book is one of the best things that I ever read that talks about the 4 male archetypes that we're going to talk about today: the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And I'll give you guys a link to this book below. But I just wanted to show the book because while I've done a lot of research in terms of this specific framework, this book does a really excellent job of laying out the different lenses of a king, of a warrior, of a magician, and a lover. And when I say those words, it's important that we start this off by understanding that these words represent thought patterns or behavior patterns that exist within each of us. Okay, so we as modern men all have kingly elements. We all have magicians within us. We all have warriors within us as well. And we also have lovers. And even when I say those words, you can start to sense into that part of yourself, which is a warrior, right? I'm going to talk about the qualities of a warrior. And you can sense into the part of yourself that is a magician, the part that creates magic in this life, right? It's a little bit different than the warrior. And the part that's a king, the part that's like that noble overseer of things. And then, of course, the part that's a lover, that spontaneous, passionate part of yourselves. These are just different lenses that we can look through, because we look through life through lenses like this all the time. And when we come to a meeting like this, all we're trying to do is raise our awareness level of what already exists, that we are seeing things through perceptive lenses. And these 4 archetypes are very relevant and important for us to understand, because at the core of our work together is always, how can we as modern men become the best versions of ourselves? Boom. I mean, that's always what we're focused on. When I look at you, when I talk to you guys, I'm thinking, what can we do to shift ourselves into the trajectory of life that creates the most absurd and exciting set of circumstances and outcomes that we can ever dream of. This is all about freedom. Okay, we're trying to gain as much freedom as we possibly can. Freedom means different things to different people. And when we start looking at this framework, this idea of archetypes, this relates to our ability to gain freedom because we're already looking at life this way. These archetypes, as Jung said, are hardwired into our psyche. That's what he said, that these archetypes are hardwired in. You're already doing this. What we're doing here in this video is just adding awareness to it so that way you can consciously perceive things in this way to better yourself. Again, guys, this is all about rapidity, getting you there faster. Okay, so as we're going to go through the description of these archetypes, what I want you to do is start thinking about how these lenses live within you right now. Like, how are you these different archetypes? Okay, because it's in the ability for you to create distinctions that gives you more power and control, because there will be times where it is the warrior that needs to come online. There are times where you do need to unleash the magician, and you'll now know what this is. You'll know what that magician does, and he's a very real part of you. There are times where the king needs to come online more, and you need to act in terms of that frequency, that archetype more. And the lover as well. There'll be times where that is just so relevant and that part needs to come out more and to be expressed more. Okay? Because any one of these parts, when they get repressed and they're not expressed, it causes pain and suffering. Okay? So let's talk about the warrior to start. Okay? And I'm wearing warrior red here today. In a lot of our programs, when we do warrior work, we will often wear red, and it's just a symbol. Okay, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean blood. Okay, it just means that that energy, the warrior has an energy to him. And a lot of our man for man work, a lot of the programs that we do are based around the archetypes, and that's intentional because as men, we naturally resonate with these different ways of looking at the world. So the warrior is that part of ourselves which has that willpower and that resiliency to push through. Okay, it's that part that uses willpower, right? We know the warrior energy. This is perhaps the easiest one to kind of comprehend. It's that part of you that wants to develop more resiliency, that part of you that is like ready to like develop more willpower, that part of you that just wants to take on anything, or that part of you that wants to develop the capacity to become more of a warrior. Some people have the warrior energy already built in. Some need to develop it more. But at the end of the day, what the frequency is about, what the lens is about moving forward. The warrior is in action, right? The warrior is never somebody that sits back and reflects. The warrior is always moving forward. Okay, and this is a very, very powerful part of ourselves as men, where we know that we always need to be moving forward, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not 100% right, even if it's not perfect, we move forward. We often think of the warrior, in terms of like these battles, like fighting. Look, in modern times, and we watch movies like Gladiator, we watch all these movies that represent the warrior archetype. And by the way, when we go through this today, you're going to see that so many of the famous characters that we see in books and movies are based on these archetypes. Right? Like Gladiator, Russell Crowe's character, that's the warrior energy, always moving forward, dealing with whatever present reality is and moving forward, making the best of it. That's the warrior at his best. All right? The warrior also has these elements of courageousness, right? Fearlessness, like moving forward even if you're not certain. That's the best of the warrior, right? And I want you to think right now, like, in what part of your life could you enact and engage and activate that warrior more? Maybe it's something to do with your work. Maybe it's something to do with a relationship. Maybe you need to have that hard conversation with somebody. Maybe you need to take on your physicality and get yourself in better shape. All good stuff for the warrior. The warrior is the part that cuts through the most obvious and grossest layers of limitation. This is why in our programs in Man for Man, when men come into our curriculums, it always starts with the warrior activation, because there are just obvious things that we all need to work through. Obvious limitations that we have physically or mentally or emotionally that we need to cut through. That's warrior's work. Because guys, we're not living in a time, for the most part, if you're watching this video, you're not somebody that's living in a situation that you need to have a physical sword to go out and destroy your enemy. You know, modern day men, modern day warriors have to use different tools to be able to slice through the limitations, to slice through our enemies. For most of us, it's internal. This is just the way that the world is right now, the way that we've evolved. We are dealing with our own inner demons. We can activate that warrior to slice through and cut through our grosser limitations that exist internally. Man, I hope you're getting that. This is such a powerful part to activate. That's why we call it warrior activation. You know, in our programs, we actually have a first part of the cycle where we just activate that warrior. Now, the last piece to the warrior that I want to share is the warrior also isn't the leader, right? The warrior is committed to an ideal or a series of ideals that is greater than himself. You know, he can be connected with something that's kingly, or he can be connected with a movement or an ideal, but he is, you know, a soldier in a way, working towards something, doing the hard work himself of moving forward with fearlessness, with courage. And at his best, the warrior also embodies a sense of truthfulness about his ideals. He knows who he is. Okay, he's moving forward, but he does the hard work, and he's authentic. There's this authentic part of the warrior. There's no manipulation. There's pure moving forward. There's pure, I'm connected with this belief. I'm connected with this ideal. And in our work, what we as man for man are connected with is this idea that right now in this world, we can live our best lives. We need to do some work. We need to get rid of all the noise out there. The warrior's work is one to become internal. That's the call of modern day warriors, is to become more internal, to better ourselves from the inside out, okay? Where we don't focus on all the distractions of the world, and that is hard work. We are inundated and pinged with information everywhere. And the warrior that we cultivate here is one that's internal, a power from the internal, an authenticity that's real about who we are. That's magnetic. That's why the warrior, when cultivated, creates this magnetic force. Very, very beautiful. Okay, and I can go on and on about it, but I want to be able to switch over to the different archetypes. So that's warrior's work, okay, or the warrior archetype. The second is the magician. Very different than the warrior. And the magician, the way that we can most easily understand the notion of the magician is that part of ourselves that, yes, can create magic in life. It's that part of ourselves that has a lightness embedded with him. There's like this almost like childhood exuberance. You know, the magician at our best, you know, like doesn't have a linear pathway. Like the warrior is very linear. Like I'm going to do this and this. The magician can kind of create circumstances with himself. You know that part of you. You've had magic transpire in your life. And it usually comes from like this very light, exuberant, happy, joyful place where you're just kind of having fun, right? And you're exploring the bigger ideas. You know, the magician is kind of connected with the larger contemplations, right? And is kind of playing with like the things that are non-linear, you know, the ways that we don't typically understand things cognitively, okay? The way that we don't look at it intellectually. The magician is playing in a different realm. I mean, think of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. Like, he's working differently in the world than Aragorn or any of the other characters that represent different archetypes. And this is really, really, really relevant, guys, because the magician is the one that, in my opinion, is the one that is most lost among modern day men. Like, where's the magic? Where's the lightness? We've gotten so beaten down with the heaviness, the seriousness of all of our situations, right? Our money situations, our jobs, like our relationships, like the slog of life. It's like, oh, we got to do all this work. Now Todd is telling me I got to do all this work to better myself. Oh my God, I got to do this. I got to do that. It's heavy and hard. But the magician wears a completely different lens. The magician is light, fun, engaging, magnetic, right? Like just believes in magic, believes in like guides and angels and connects with them in some way. Whatever your belief structure might be, the magician thinks outside of that realm. And I want you to think about right now, as I'm sharing this, like, where is your magician? Is he active? Is he alive? Is he living? Is he electric right now? Okay? And if not, how can you start to electrify and magnetize this beautiful part of yourself? This is built-in DNA stuff in your mind, the idea that you can create amazing things in this life. The men who have a very active magician are the ones that you're like, how are they doing all that? How are they possibly living that life? Their magicians are active because it doesn't make any sense. How can they possibly have these huge families and several businesses and traveling all over the world? How do they still sleep? How do they still eat, right? Like, this is a very active magician part of yourselves. And I'm saying it here because we want to activate all these parts of ourselves, because when they're all active, they create this really beautiful flow of humanity, of manhood that kind of works together instead of working in opposition with each other. Because the magician and the warrior particularly work very well together. So that's magician, right? Feel him, activate him. So the third piece is the king, right? And I think we all know the what a king means. You know, there's so much out there in terms of, you know, king ideology, in terms of like king frequency. It's all over movies, all over our books. And, you know, the way that I would describe it is that part of ourselves that has that more noble, more present, more kind energy and atmosphere about him. You know, the king is that part of ourselves who is the overseer of the land. Meaning the king is the ability to witness and observe things. So kings often take in a lot of information. They move slower, they're patient. But perhaps the biggest thing that separates a king is the idea where the king is not just out for himself. The king is thinking about others. The king is thinking about families and communities and how the whole piece is working together. You have that part in you that thinks about not just you, but like your family and your community and like the world in general. This is a very beautiful part of us. The king, at his best, is a master at making wise decisions. He takes in information, not just to take in information. He takes in information so that way he can make really good choices about things in his own life that will also affect the greater good in the best possible way. Think about all the king characters that we see in movies, that, they have all this power. Maybe it's the type of king that is power hungry, because the king does have connection with power. A king does have connection with divinity. The way that kinghood and queenhood and royalty really emerged, in the history, if you really understand this, the idea of royalty was that these people who represented the royals had a connection with the divine. They were the symbol of connection with humanity and God, right? And this is why crowns exist. If you ever watch The Crown on Netflix, they do a really good job of explaining this. The queen, with her crown, was a representation of a connection with the divine. This is how royalty began, because this is what we want as humans. We want connection with the divine. And when we say divine, I use that word not lightly, because we all have our own ideas of what that means. But that's what this is. That's what the king is. It's that part of us that's really able to oversee and reflect and make wise decisions and be connected with the greater narrative of who we are. Not just the me, not just the I. Okay, and I want you to think about, right now as I'm sharing this, who's your king? Is he active? Are you really thinking about things from a greater standpoint and how your actions or your inactions are affecting those around you and your communities? What are you a stand for collectively in our work together in Man for Man? The guys that are in King's work with me, we're not just working on ourselves, we're working on bigger projects, things that are affecting the greater good. How can we end childhood hunger on this planet? I mean, personally, guys, there's plenty of food on this planet, yet millions of kids a day that don't have enough to eat. Right now, as I'm saying these words, there's millions of kids starving. That makes no sense to me. That's King's work, where we have to say, no, we can do better. We can do better as men to make sure that the whole land, all of our communities are taken care of. Okay? And in that process, we are becoming the best versions of ourselves, the best leaders. Okay? So that's the king. As you see, very different than the magician, which is like that light, exuberant part. And then the warrior, which is very head down, straightforward, moving on with integrity. Okay? And then the last piece, of course, is the lover, which is very different. Again, and even when I say that word, you can already feel it. The lover, is that part of us that seeks that connection, that seeks that bliss, that wants physical connection. We think of the lover, obviously, can be as a sexual creature because we are sexual creatures. That's how we propagate our species, through sex. That's a whole part of ourselves. We are designed to propagate. Okay, and in that comes emotions and human connection. That isn't just sexual. Okay, and the lover part of ourselves seeks the bliss, seeks the euphoria. God, in our world right now, how many of us feel euphoric, feel blissful, right? Like right now, take inventory. Do you often feel amazing in your body? Hopefully, yes. For most modern men, the answer is no. We need to find and relocate those feelings of bliss, and not just sexual bliss, but bliss and euphoria and excitement and connection and real community. The lover's connected with nature, loves to go outside and feel the air and feel, the lover smells the roses, smells the flowers, appreciates life. The lover is spontaneous, is that part of ourselves that's romantic and can go do things and make people laugh and make people feel loved, right? You see how, as I'm sharing, the different archetypes and the qualities, how they're very different, yet how they all exist within us. This is the teaching. The fact that we wear these different lenses, okay, that we wear these different frequencies of thought and perception. And why is it important? It's important because we give ourselves the greater ability to flow through our days and make wise decisions by working with all the archetypes. Okay, it's not just warrior's work. It's not just activating the magician. It's not just becoming the king. And it's not just being the lover. Because that's not real. We're all of them intertwined into one person right here, right now. And the advantage of understanding these archetypes and going deep into this work is that you can do work on these individual parts of yourself. When men come in and they do the warrior activated process with us, they are literally taking on that part of themselves and understanding how to fully activate him and how to fully control him and harness his energy so that way he can do what he needs to do within your life. The magician, how do we activate that part of yourself that's exuberant and light and fun? This is the fun part in a lot of ways. This is the part that's missing for so many guys that are out there feeling mediocre, bored, lonely, anxious. Activate the magician. Learn how to get into that frequency and life becomes fun again. The king, how do we activate that part of ourselves that makes wise decisions, not just on very little information, but on larger amounts of information that not only affects us as individuals, but those in our lives and even those in our greater communities. King's work. Okay, it's a part of you. And then the lover. How can you recreate and remember what it feels like to be euphoric and blissful and spontaneous? And when we can segregate it this way, it gives us the ability as men to activate these parts of ourselves so that way we can feel alive again, right? We can be in our bodies again and go out and achieve the things that we want to, not just because we're checking boxes off a piece of paper, but because we want to experience the joy and fulfillment that comes with it. The joy and fulfillment that comes with achieving our biggest dreams. And I got to tell you guys that while I don't give a lot of frameworks, there's only a few that we work with. This one, the king, the warrior, the lover, and the magician, has been the most profound series of perspectives. And we built out a step-by-step process for each component, right? The warrior activated is boom, you come in there and you activate that warrior. The magician is all about achieving things. How do we achieve our dreams step by step, right? The king is a different thing. And the lover is kind of embedded in everything that we do, which is why I just love our work so much, because we're really dealing with the truth that we as men have all these parts to ourselves. We just have never taken the time to consciously become so aware of them, to crystallize our awareness of them, and then work on them as individualized parts to ourselves. But when we do, you're off to the races. You're off to the races. So big love, my brothers, and I'll see you on the next call.